And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson. Please remember, however you are finding us, maybe you are listening on Apple Podcasts, maybe you are watching us on YouTube, but you can also follow and stream us on Spotify. So if that is where you are starting to collect your podcast, you want to listen to your favorite album, but then also listen to this multi-platform excellence from the Cover 3 podcast, follow and stream us on Spotify. Also, remember, if you want to get in a question for the mailbag, we will be doing another one here at the end of the week. The way to get in there is leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and then within that review, put your question. You'll get added to the big old bag of mail. We love some of the ways that the conversations twist and turn as we follow some of y'all's interests, and so we will be doing that again this week. Go ahead and leave us the review. So today's business is starting to dig into ways that college football can change. We introduced this as rule changes, and we put out a call on Twitter. Follow us at Cover 3 Podcast on Twitter. And it is on field, it is off field, it is the way college football is structured. Gentlemen, I have my I think that we can start in a lot of different places. I've sort of grouped this in my mind, at least for some of the areas that I wanted to explore, with offense, defense, special teams, off field, and then off field sort of has some different pieces to it, including the way that college football is structured. I wanted to at least start by seeing, is there any one place where you would like to start? Because we've got some good fan submissions. We've got Tom Fernelli has dropped some good stuff in the group chat, as well as he's not going to be able to join us today. I haven't gotten to compare notes with y'all. Maybe we're addressing some of the same topics. Where do y'all want to start with this discussion?
I'm down for wherever you want to go, but like if we can just throw one out.
Yeah, just throw one out.
All right. So this is something I've written about for, I don't know, the last 5 or 6 years. I really think that, and I'll acknowledge that there's an element here that I don't like, but I do think that targeting is here to stay, right? Like, they're not going to remove targeting because the people will think the game of football is unsafe and blah, 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 blah. But I do think that we had a positive step in the right direction for not making guys leave the field in like a essential perp walk when they get ejected. But I think we can go a step further and comp it to basketball. I've written about this for a couple of years. We need to have a flagrant 1 and a flagrant 2 style targeting. And I think the way you do this is you do have to judge intent a little bit. You look at the angle of the hit. You look at the defender. You say, okay, did the defender lower his head into the strike zone? What is the strike zone? Like, you can take a pretty decent look and say, where was he launching himself? Okay. If he was launching himself at the running back's hip and the back all of a sudden ducks into him at the last minute, or if the quarterback, sorry, Danny, decides that he's going to execute a ridiculous Ozzie Smith pop-up slide with 1 yard to go, like, after you've already, left your feet and try to make the tackle, and I know you're not supposed to leave your feet, but after you've already kind of gone into your tackling motion, if it's pretty clear that you were not intending to pop this guy in the head or neck area, and that the offensive player lowered himself into your zone, look, maybe we give you a 15-yard incidental helmet-to-helmet hit, but we don't eject you. If you get 2 incidentals, then we're just going to say, hey, that's too much coincidence. You're gone. If it's a clear kill shot, which I think is what we're trying to legislate out of the game of football, then okay, you're gone right there. But like flagrant 1, flagrant 2, I know there's a downside to asking officials to review things and judge intent, but they're already reviewing it. And in some cases, it's very obvious that it's. You even hear the broadcaster say, "Oh, that's a really terrible one," but it's by the letter of the law. We have to do it. So let's change that.
Can I ask you a question? Follow up?
Yeah.
James Skalski against Ohio State hits Justin Fields, gets ejected. What would you have done with that one?
So he
crushed him in the ribs, right?
Yes, the one that took him to the ribs. It was like the crown of the helmet, but it was a little dicey. Like, I don't think the intent was there. And Skalski, after the game, said, "Hey, I shouldn't have done this." But as I was watching it, I felt it was a letter of the law that if you had a flagrant 1, flagrant 2 type of situation, that would not have warranted ejection. But that's what I get. Like, trust me, I am more willing to be lenient, to take the look. I love it. I've been saying the same thing. And yet I do get people, even after that hit, said, well, this is to protect them. This is to protect James Skalski. This is to protect both people that are involved in this collision. It's to protect the receiver, whoever has the ball, and it's to protect the defender from lowering his head. The only thing, and I totally agree, I think you should be able to judge intent. I think sometimes it's totally obvious. I just wonder about the ones that aren't so obvious, that are gray areas, how much controversy they could provide and how much delay in the game they could provide. And that's an area I'll get to some of my things that I want to see, because the 4 hour and 15-minute games I think are an issue for me. But like, that would be my thing. Would you like, because this is such a wide open topic and I love it, because I do think it needs to address. I have called games, and this was before the rule change, when you didn't have to leave the field and they're starting to review them, when it was automatic. And I remember watching players march off the field, like the perp walk, like you mentioned, and thinking, oh my gosh, his parents are probably embarrassed. Like, getting ejected of the game is the worst thing you could do. Like, it's such like a bad, just bad mojo. It's a blemish on your record. Like, you don't want to get ejected ever. And yet that's what we were treating guys. And some of these hits were just incidental, which that's where I do agree with you. I just think it's a very complex topic that at least I wish they would talk about, because I do think there is a way you could implement the flagrant 1, flagrant 2, like you're talking about, yellow card, red card, 2 yellows. I think there's a way you could do it and do it better, which I hope they do, because they've looked at this, they've adjusted it slowly. Maybe they'll look at it again.
Willie on Twitter also in on the flagrant 1, flagrant 2. I know Tom was in on the yellow card, red card.
Of course
John,
he was.
Yeah, John on Twitter says targeting 15-yard penalty is fine, but player stays in the game unless he commits 2 in one game. Then he is ejected from the current game. Also, targeting in a bowl game should not spill into the next regular season first game. Any thoughts about the way that they've got that carryover set up?
It's silly. I think getting tossed from a bowl game is punishment enough.
That should be it. There shouldn't be any carryover into the next season, because James
Exactly.
Skalski, by the way, also ejected from the national championship game against LSU, missed the first half of Clemson's opener.
To Danny's question, I think there's an interesting discussion to be had. Do you want to use that flagrant 1, flagrant 2 for ones that are targeting of the head and neck area? Because I think that's where it really plays in more. The one that is basically designed to protect the hitter, maybe you leave that as it is, because like if you lower your head to make the tackle, that is a little bit different. But there are certain situations where you're making a good tackle, you're mostly head up, and then the guy spins into your strike zone and ducks into it, and all of a sudden your form tackle becomes an ejectable hit. That's the one I think we have to avoid ejecting for.
There is I'd like to just keep following this, because it sounds like, Danny, are you in on the review shot clock? Because I'm torn on this. I've debated it and I like it a lot. Like, if you can make a decision in 60 to 90 seconds, like whatever we agree on, then let's just get back to it.
30 to 45.
If you've got it, wouldn't you want to make sure you get it right?
No. We've got it without restrictions, and they still can't get it right. Like, how many times do you watch a game and you're like, what videos are they watching? And you'll see them and they'll do something and they're still indecision. I personally think replay is to overturn the plays that are blatantly missed calls that were obvious, where whoops, he thought it was a fumble and it wasn't, or his knee was down, like very obvious, his foot was in bounds. If you need longer than 30 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute, okay, maybe a minute, like maybe it's 60 seconds. Like, if you need longer than that, then it's indecisive, then it's inconclusive, go with the call on the field. It should be quick, I see it, there it is. And it takes probably 60 seconds is right, because you some of these bigger games, you have 18 camera angles, so you need to go through them, but half of them are irrelevant. They can't see it. So give them a few looks. And if it's obvious, bam, overturn it. If it's not, go with the call on the field. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world, because again, I've found myself in the booth and you start watching it over and over and you're talking to yourself out loud, just like the guy, they're doing back when they're watching it, and you start talking out loud, you talk yourself into things that aren't really there.
So let me ask you a question. Is it 60 seconds from the time the guy starts watching, or 60 seconds from the play? No, because like it does take it takes a minute to get the camera angles together. So like I'm totally in favor of 60 seconds viewing time only. We'll put the timer there in the stadium. We can sell it to, I don't know, get like it's very sellable. CBS could easily sell this on their broadcast. Like, hey guys, we're not going to go to commercial break, but we're going to run this ad next to it as you know, as we watch the 60-second shot clock. I'm all in on that, but like we got to make sure that they got all the camera angles lined up, and they're like, all right, hey, the review starts now, and we go from there.
I'm trying to look and see the average length of a review. Just trying. I don't see it anywhere obvious. Like when I Googled it, because I'd be curious to know. Like, is it much longer? Or are we making too much of a big deal? I feel like they go on for 2.5 minutes sometimes. And I agree with you. You do need to get to the to have the time in place. I'd also be okay with a centralized location that handles all of them. So they're starting to look the minute the play ends, they're looking at it and they can already kind of have a beat on it. So they have it ready to go. Like there's easily ways to speed it up.
I had a centralized review office on my list as well. And it's similar to the targeting, that the shot clock for instant replay, big listener support. You're really preaching to a lot of people that want to see it slow down, want to see the game, not slow down, but the game sort of speed up, which I'll go ahead and throw this one out there. I am willing to take college football to the clock doesn't stop on first down. Clock still stops if you step out of bounds, so that you still have the ability as a team that's trying to press, who might not have timeouts. You can always still spike the ball, but stopping the clock on first down, I say let's keep that thing running just the way the NFL does, and then we start to bring the game time a little bit closer to those NFL levels.
Love it. I would say just go ahead and follow the NFL clock rules, all of them. Have a 2-minute warning. For me, going from college to the NFL, and you have enough to learn already on your plate, and then you have clock management in a different type of area, and it's so different, and it takes some time getting used to. You mentioned the NFL. They have it down to a science. I mean, those games look at the witching hour on the red zone. They are all finishing at the same time, and it's all about 3 hours, 15, 3:20. And it's beautiful. It's awesome. They go a little bit longer in their primetime games, which I'm okay with. But the 8 o'clock primetime game on Pick Your Network, so we not discriminate against anybody, that really kicks off at 8:20, then, bleeds into 12:45 by the time it's over, is just stupid. And then it also impacts the people not only that are at home trying to stay awake, but go to the game and to sit in stands for 4 hours plus. That can be in the heat. Like that's for the noon and 3:30 windows. Then you're hot. And if you've had a couple cold ones in that heat, you're maybe not making that fourth quarter.
I'm okay with that, except I would like to have it stay in the final couple minutes of the game. I think if you take it away too much, it creates almost a little bit too much certainty as far as who's going to win. And look, we need more eyeballs on the product, not less. So I'd be totally cool if the clock doesn't stop on first downs, except in the last 2 minutes of a quarter, or except like maybe in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the half. Maybe you don't go 2-minute warning, but you do go clock stops, first downs, the final 2 minutes of the game. So we can have that late game drama. We can have those crazy comebacks, and that otherwise you can just quickly do in the math in your head. Okay. All right. They don't got any stoppages. They don't have timeouts. This thing's done.
Do you think that what is holding college football from having the NFL style communication with quarterback and one defensive player having the microphone to the coaches? Because we could eliminate the sign stealing allegations and we could eliminate all of our boards and listen, those GAs can be doing better things than hitting the Macarena on the sidelines when you've got like 3 dummy calls and 1 real call all coming in at the same time. If we've got the communication being done by wireless headset, why isn't that happening already? And would you support it?
I absolutely would support it. My hunch was always cost, but let's be real. I mean, and this is where this might go down the road of separation from the Power Five, from the Group of Five. And I think the NCAA wants to have one overarching rule book over all of college football, Division I, II, III. then it becomes a cost issue. Well, sorry, like if you take advantage of it, if you want them, and I guarantee you they'd scrape up the money somewhere. I mean, if I was a quarterback, I'd be paying my own money. It's a couple $100 to have a little speaker put in there and a walkie-talkie. It's so streamlined. It's so much better. You talk about going fast. Now, defensive coaches may not want it, but you can put them in the defensive player's helmet too. Give them to one of the defensive players out there. Again, the closer aligned with the NFL on the rules we go, I think the better the game becomes. And I think this is one of them where it just makes too much sense.
I guess my only pushback on this, Danny, is I watch some 7-on-7 a lot. I mean, I go to a bunch of tournaments every year, and there's some of these coaches that literally yell out who to throw the ball to during the play, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, all right, hey, slot. Yep. And I'm like, this is not teaching anybody anything, okay? Like, You can't have this. So I do worry that with some of these college defenses trying to get their defense set so fast, and the offense is lined up. I mean, you got post shift snap stuff to worry about, but college to me is supposed to be about teaching and learning and developing too. So I do worry a little bit about like the Sean McVay ish nature Goff. Of this. Right. Yeah. It's like, does Jared Goff know how to read a defense? Who knows? Because McVay calls the play for him every time and tells him who to throw it to.
And you cut it off at 15 seconds. That's why they were going off fast. But I'll follow with this, bud. How many times, and we've gotten away from it a little bit, thank goodness. But you see the quarterback, the line of scrimmage,
the check with
52, me. Blue 52 said hut. No one moves. Quarterback turns, looks over. What do I do? And then they, signal, and then he turns back and he signals, and then they go. Like, it is so frustrating. Again, like, you notice a lot of these things when you're broadcasting, like even more so, because it's incredibly frustrating, because you're like, can't you teach him the checks? Now, a coach would say 20 hours a week. You can't have much. Well, then you're doing too much. Then just dial it back some. Give them what they can handle. So I totally hear what you're saying. It should be about teaching. But I think if you did cut it off, and maybe you cut it off at 20 seconds, maybe you give them a certain amount of time where they can call in the play. But I do think 15 seconds is bad. I mean, it goes fast. There were a lot of times when I was playing for Denver and Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak, they were called plays together. And if there was, you'd be like going, come on, let's get that play in. And they'd be like, ace right trip, flip it, wing opposite, Q high, and then it just cuts off. And you're like, okay, what? And you so you had to actually, this is the next level type stuff. We actually memorized the plays every week so that you got that much of the formation. You knew it was going to be Q hot Louis, half 17 wing and Y out because of the formation and the personnel. Like, that's the type of things you get as a professional, but at college you can't. But then it's on the coach. If you can't get it in, it should be enough time. If you can't get it in by then burn a timeout. That's on you guys.
All right, Danny, what's on Danny, Bud, or either one? What's on y'all's list?
I think Danny Bud. Okay, well, all right. If it's me, I'll go. Look, I love offense. I like points, all that stuff. What I don't love is just constant guys wide open all the time, or defenses that basically are just waving the white flag, playing nothing but umbrella, and trying to win red zone roulette. I like explosive plays that happen because somebody made a move on somebody. I like stuff that's creatively schemed open. I like one-on-one catches where the guy comes down with the ball. I don't love seeing Devontae Smith run with nobody else in the frame, because you've got an offensive tackle coming and blocking a safety at 7 or 8 yards depth, where the safety played it exactly how he's supposed to play it since he played it since Little League. But once he sees that 300-pounder coming out that deep on him, he's got to come up, because it's run. Like, if you grew up and played any level of football, you know what it is. And the thing is, like, I play golf with a referee for a Power 5 league, and he's told me, he's like, look, man, we just can't catch it. Like, the way we align, the number of officials we have, the way the rule is, we're just going to miss them more often than not. And the way the penalty is, it's 5 yards, replay the down. It's basically not much of a penalty at all. And so, like, you'll gladly take that penalty over and over again as an offense for a chance to create wide open shots. And I think wide open shots are boring. That's like having a lot more runs scored in baseball because of walks. Let's have more action in the game, but let's have more one-on-one competition in the game. So I think we need to somehow fix a legal man downfield. I don't know that we have to go to NFL with 1 yard downfield, but either make it reviewable which would slow the game down, which I don't love, or make it more punitive, like 5 yards and loss of down, or 10 yards and loss of down. I think there needs to probably be like a loss of down element thing in there, because RPOs are great. But I mean, you got Hugh Freeze, who's like the captain of the downfield RPO stuff, calling out Nick Saban for the national championship game. If there's ever been a, if you can't beat him, join him example, that was it. Right. And Freeze is kind of sarcastically, you guys see this? Like that tackle looks like he's, Leatherwood's 12 yards downfield. Either make it reviewable, make it more punitive, or both. I don't like the way it is right now, because you've got, I was talking to Brandon Marcel in our brainstorm meeting this morning. He was telling me a coach basically told him, we don't really care what happens anymore. We just want to make sure that we prevent explosive plays and we try to win in the red zone, because like we can't play these guys straight up due to how the RPO game's going. That sucks. That's not a great viewing experience, I don't think. I don't love all the wide open. So
you were ruling out just take it to NFL with the 1 yard. You would rather see it be more punitive.
Called.
Yeah,
and you might have to add a ref. You might have to add a ref. I mean,
sure.
That's probably what you would have to do because of what your buddy's saying. I think that's the way the refs feel. Maybe you have to have somebody who's assigned right around the line of scrimmage, and that's all he's looking at. And you could throw him in, he could look at something else, but you give a little bit of workload and you start calling it. Because if they called it and it was 3 yards, it could still be tricky. It could still be something that could be an offensive tactic that is tough to defend. But now it's impossible to defend. And that's, we talk about some of the numbers that are put up, these 76% completion percentages for an entire season, and these statistics were out of control. Those would come back down to earth a little bit. And I'm not trying to do that. And that's why I wonder if anybody's really worried about this, because we love offensive football. We love putting up the points. But I agree with you. I don't think it's great football when the defense is playing with their hands tied behind their back. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Do you guys like all the super wide open? I mean, maybe casual fans do, but like I like
they like
catches.
Big plays, and you get a catch and he's 5 yards and he runs for 20. I mean, they do. I don't think that's, and I think it's interesting how we've kind of come full circle now, because as the perceived anti-SEC guys, I used to like get really mad. I'm like, yes, of course, these SEC defenses are top 25 because the offenses they're playing against, this is 10, 15 years ago, are not doing anything. Their quarterback play is subpar. They're running the ball still. Go watch the Big 12. Go watch some other teams are doing, spreading the ball around, taking some of these concepts. And now look what's happened. Like, we've brought in some schemes which are impossible to defend. And these SEC defenses, which still have a ton of NFL talent, are getting shredded. And it's just, there's got to be a balance there somewhere, because I don't want it to go back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But if you call the rule the way it's designed and leave it at 3 yards and just effectively enforce it, then I think it would balance things out a little bit where defense did matter. Because now, you guys heard me say this on the podcast, it's not defense wins championships anymore. It's just enough defense. And like Bud is saying, it's in the red zone and it's trying to get stops and force field goals. Once you get down there, just don't give up the big play. Just hang on for life and maybe get a stop in the red zone.
Not every team also has Alex Leatherwood, right?
Right.
There is a limit to these massive advantages. These not every wide receiver is Devonta Smith. Not every lineman that's coming downhill on an RPO is Alex Leatherwood. Like when these same schemes are executed, and when like some of the literally same plays are called in different conferences, we're not seeing the same results. So it definitely makes a difference at the top of college football. I think it makes less of a difference as you start to work your way down in the pecking order.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. But there's a certain element of, like, obviously good athletes always help to play good defense. That's fairly obvious. But some of these teams are just, the humility of these defensive coaches now is sort of eye-opening. They're just kind of admitting, we're not going to try it. Like, we're just not going to do it. We're going to drop 8. We're going to dare you to run the ball. Like, when in our lifetimes has an opposing defensive coordinator said, man, I really hope they run the ball on us, right? Well, because you know what? On an efficiency basis, that's a better outcome for your defense than getting hit with these explosive plays. Like, they're trying to bait teams into running the ball, not be explosive, and then win in the red zone. And I just think that's not very fun football. Like, let's have 43-yard plays and, okay, march down the field, another first down. Now we're in the red zone. Okay, red zone, flip a coin, because you can't be quite as wide open in the red zone. I don't know. but people like points, so I doubt that'll happen.
Cover 3 listeners, man, I have got to let y'all know about Paramount Plus. You've probably seen the journey to Mount Paramount. You know, Bill Cowher, James Corden, Stephen Colbert, Patrick Stewart, heck, even Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, it's a motley crew they got right there. But Paramount Plus is live sports, it's breaking news, and a whole mountain of entertainment. You can go straight from game day to movie night and everywhere in between with Paramount Plus. You can stream iconic movies like The Godfather, Indiana Jones, and Mission Impossible, along with new episodes of critically acclaimed original series like Star Trek Picard, The Good Fight, and The Stand. And get this. It's where you can dive into live sports from us, CBS Sports. That includes the NFL, March Madness, the Masters, and Champions League Soccer, plus hit shows from CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, BET, Smithsonian Channel, Comedy Central. Yeah, as much SpongeBob as you can possibly fit in your face. It's there with Paramount Plus. Live sports, breaking news, a mountain of entertainment. Paramount Plus, streaming March 4th. Coming up on the other side, a futuristic proposal that was made years ago. I'm going to resurface it and see what these two think. Next. I think that we laughed pretty hard about this in person, but back in Charlotte a while ago, or maybe at any ACC football kickoff.
Okay.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
Oh,
Forgive the bad impression, but
the happy hour there is pretty solid. So I may have just. Oh, by the way, Felder says hi. He was texting me a bunch of defensive inspired rule proposals. So.
tell Michael Felder at In the Bleachers on Twitter. He is the absolute best. Tell him I said hi as well. I've been telling y'all for a long time now. We need to put lasers on top of the goalpost.
Yes,
lasers on the goalposts. Jimbo Fisher out in like 2012, 2011, 2013, maybe even before. This might have been something that he's been on for a long time, but it used to drive him crazy that officials didn't know what to do if the ball went so high on a field goal attempt that it went over the top of the goalposts. And he just would sit there and explain to reporters for about 10 minutes how it could work. All we need to do is just put lasers on the top of the goalposts. And so I would like to suggest, if we're making rule changes in honor of Jimbo Fisher, we can call it the Jimbo development. I would like to see lasers on top of the goalposts. And if we want to use that technology and whatever we can borrow from tennis as well, you know, we could really start to figure out how to play some things. So like the spotting of the ball could also be done with a similar manner right there, especially when we're trying to judge whether or not we get a first down or not, but lasers on top of the goalposts.
So 2012, I think, is the year that Jimbo
really went hard on it.
Yeah, because this is from Martin Rickman, another guy from the Triangle, man. Just old school shout outs today. He interviewed Dustin Hopkins, and Hopkins said basically that he missed a 27-yarder that the refs counted good because it was so high. And Hopkins did kick the ball like really high at Florida State. And I remember Jimbo, he wanted the lasers up there. And we did some research on this, like would the FAA approve if you had lasers shooting up from the thing at Doak, but it's also like, is it a no-fly zone during game time? So like, would that even be an issue? And I can't find that post at my previous place of employment. So I know this is probably not great radio, but I was really hoping to resurface the research we did.
So with technology, since we're going there, the chip, if we're thinking the helmet speakers are going to be cost, an issue, the chip in the football could be an issue. No, I mean, because they use a lot of footballs throughout the year, 16 in a game, I think is the number they probably use. They're going to be able to chip that many. And then there is where is the knee when the football, I guess you could freeze it on camera and then do it. There's definitely a better way. It's amazing if you look at slippage through a game of how many yards probably over the course of a game and over a season are lost or gained just based on some 60-year-old kind of hopping on and then just putting his foot down. It is such a gross estimate that it's kind of embarrassing that we're in 2021 and they still do it the same way they've done 100 years ago. It is pretty remarkably bad.
It's like the idea that over the course of the season, it could be hundreds of yards.
Yes. Yeah.
It
I think so.
Oh,
Absolutely. Because there's a half yard here or there all the time in games. Like I bet it's probably about 10 yards a game. I would say if you added them all up and you had the precision and you could compare it next to what they're doing when they just kind of run over and waddle out there and look at the chains and then put it down, it definitely could be better. But I don't know if we're ready yet, which is kind of crazy. We just landed on Mars. Let's go. We got to fix this thing. Would you guys be okay? I saw this was a suggestion on our Twitter feed, and I thought it was a pretty good one. 2 feet inbounds for a catch as opposed to 1 foot, or is it different? This is college, that's pros, let them get 1 foot?
I'm cool with 1 foot in college based on the idea that we are dealing with such a larger pool of pass catchers, like all throughout the sport. I mean, I demand excellence from that small percentage that it's able to make it up to the NFL and be playing on Sundays. But I do think that'd be asking a lot from our wide receivers and take away what have been like awesome. Fans love highlight reel catches, and a 1 foot tap it down and drag it in college that provides more highlights along the way.
I think I'm with Chip on this. I like the 1 foot rule, and also it seems like it's probably a little bit easier to officiate, and like the quality of the officials in college, I don't think are quite as good as what they are in the NFL ultimately.
All right. What about any other, do you guys have offense, defense, special teams? Before you go big picture, because you guys know where I'm going to go big picture, but with the end of game situations, do you provide an opportunity outside of an onside kick? That one's been bantered about. Like you give the team and the ball 4th and 10, 4th and 15 from the 40, somewhere in there. I'd be open to that. Now I have always been more of a traditionalist, but the lack of success with onside kicks has me thinking, let's provide some more excitement for comebacks late in the game. Although I think people would freak out at the first, year or two of that taking place.
Like the complete, like a 15-yard pass type thing.
Yeah. Like you get a 4th and 15. If you convert it, probably from the 40, maybe even around where you kick off from, maybe it's the same spot. And then you can convert it and it's a first down and you keep going. And if you don't, it's turned over on downs and the other team gets the ball going the other way. So it's essentially, it would be like you wouldn't get an onside kick. It'd be like they recovered. The only thing that gets a little bit wacky is would you get pass interference and then it's just a call, but I still think you would have to, drive the length of the field or a considerable amount of the field. That's more of a wacky kind of, proposal that's been put out there because I think the kicking game is in jeopardy in general.
I have two kind of like, sorry, go ahead, Chip.
I'm open to it, but it's actually not something that I think needs to happen. Like in the like rule changes that I want to see for college football, like it didn't end up making my final cut, but I do know that as we're consistently trying to entertain ways to, ways to replace the kicking game. Like if the belief is the kicking game and the return game is going to be taken out in the future, I understand people that are trying to get ahead of it. And I do agree that as long as your 4th and 15 is on your side of the field and you've still got like a long way to go, then I'm cool with it as a potential replacement. But again, it doesn't raise to the level of necessity for me. I'm kind of cool with onside kicks, even if they're not getting converted at a high percentage.
I have two that are somewhat related to end of game / like how games are, managed, right? My first one is faking injuries. And I've been thinking about this, and from like a legality standpoint, liability standpoint, there's no way they're going to pass a rule that is going to encourage a player who's actually hurt to stay on the field. Because all it's going to take is one kid dying out there for a huge lawsuit, and everybody's like, all right, that's not happening again. Okay. So like currently there's no real disincentive to going down and faking an injury, the timeout situation, et cetera. But I do think if we can find a way to kind of make it like fake health and safety, maybe we get this passed. So here's my idea. What if you if you went down on the field and you had to leave the field, which stops the game, you have to stay off for at least the rest of the possession for a medical observational period, guys, so that the medical staff can observe you to make sure that your injury isn't more serious than you think it is. And, maybe just make sure you're not really hurt. So like you don't get to go back in until the next change of possession. Like I think if we couch it in that sort of health and safety type language, maybe they would pass that. I don't know. I do think the fake injuries are something that they got to figure out something there.
I don't like it. I think that it takes away the player who gets like a little scare, like you felt something, like I'm talking about the honest, not actually faking injuries, but if you're out for the rest of the possession, maybe you've already had like 2 knee surgeries and something like felt a little funny. And so you're going to be a lot more cautious and you're going to allow somebody to come help you up and maybe leave the field. If everything's okay, then I would hope that player isn't penalized from being able to return.
So I got 2 instances because I think it's an issue that has to be addressed. I mean, you see it all the time if it's obvious. There are 2 instances where you would get caught, and that's with cramping, because we see guys cramp all the time and you got to get off the field. But you could come back a lot of times in a play or 2. So you'd be potentially penalizing that player who wasn't faking more than he should be. The other thing is you get the wind knocked out of you sometimes. Now that's it's rare, but it does happen. But we've all seen them when there's the sniper, and the sniper is the whole coaching staff going, go down like that. And the guy just crumples and then they have to stop the game and you all know it's there. I don't know. Would that be severe enough? Like I've thought a lot about this. Can you fine the coaching staff? But they make so much money. They'd be like, sure, here's the check, like, do you slap them on the wrist? Do you double it? It probably would have to be something on the field. Would you let them buy it back, like buy the player back by using a timeout? I've seen that proposed as well. So if there was a player who had cramps, he was out for 2 plays, you were like, you know what? He's cramping. It was, we weren't faking. We want him back on the field. We're going to take a timeout and then we're going to put him back in. That's an option. But then if you're out of timeouts late in game, then you could get hosed there in a situation too, where it's a really, really tricky thing to legislate because of the unknown. And you just don't know for certain what's happening. When Chip, you were at the Texas LSU game in Austin. That game, late in the game, I was on the sidelines. This kind of knew it because I was down there. LSU was getting a lot of injuries. In Texas, there was a lot of Texas fans that were starting to boo, and it gets bad. Like, it's a bad look when you're booing kids who are getting hurt. And I remember I was watching the game with Rosillo, who I used to do the radio show with, Ryan Rosillo. And he was pretty tight with LSU's trainer and equipment staff. And so he was kind of over behind their bench, and he'd come over to be like, no, these guys are really hurt. Like, they're cramping, or this guy had like an injury that was an ankle injury for the past couple of weeks, and they've been addressing it. So they were getting frustrated, like, hey, we're not faking, but then it gets kind of ugly, and you don't want that to play out on TV or on a national stage. So I don't know. I think it does have to be addressed, but I almost feel like it's close to impossible, but you have to do something for those glaringly obvious. And maybe it's a hefty fine that doubles every time you get it. I mean, that was something in the NFL that always worked. But again, like, you find Dabo or Nick Saban are making 9 and 10 million. Is it really going to hurt them? They're like, yeah, whatever.
I mean, it was so hot that day, night in Austin. And like, I understand why it would be cramping, but also Sam Ehlinger was cooking in the second half. And so I do kind of think that LSU might have been faking it because Texas wasn't they were going to continue to score. Now, Joe Burrow also was continuing to score. So that's why LSU didn't lose that game. But I don't know, man. I like the timeout could potentially like end the medical observation period or something like that. And by the way, Bud, medical observation period is the perfect way to use this language, right? Like we want to have as much of a,
Chip, it's about health and safety.
It's about health and safety. It's not about competitiveness or faking injuries. We're really about health and safety here. What was the other one that you had for the end of games? I've got one for special teams / defense, and then some more, some big picture stuff.
Oh, I want to start overtime at the 50.
Oh, you're not just kick a field goal, right? Like 3 and out, kick a field goal.
Yeah.
Let's throw that out of overtime. I like that.
Right. Exactly. Like we shouldn't give you a chance to potentially still win, in that period if you totally fail on offense. Let's start at the 50. Also, that's a health and safety thing too. We don't need guys playing 100 plays, 120 plays a game because we go into 4 overtimes. Let's start it at 50.
That would have been way smarter than doing the wacky thing where you have to go
conversion.
They would have been better off just moving the ball back to the 50. I think it's a great suggestion.
Well, Denny, let's leave that and still move back to the 50, and we'll never have to use that nonsense because we're never going to get to a 4th overtime with both teams starting from the 50.
Would you be okay if we had ties? Like if it cut off at a certain point and college football had ties?
No, I hate ties. Enough soccer. I'm mad about the yellow card, red card thing from earlier in the show from Tom's that I even brought up. And give me as far away from soccer as we can. And I was part of a tie at Florida State. It was one of my better games, and I hated that it ended in a tie. You got to have a winner and a loser. That's why we play sports.
But 74-72 Texas A&M LSU was not football by the end of it. Those were lifeless bodies that were just like slowly trying to get out of their stance and go through the motion over and over again.
It's great. It's like
Rocky
versus Apollo Creed at the end. I mean, is that boxing? No, but it's entertaining.
But there was boxing after that game. Like, wasn't that the Damian Craig ends up?
Yes.
That was Kevin Falk against Jimbo's nephew. Remember?
Yeah.
Not a great matchup for Jimbo's nephew. Ultimately, Kevin Falk, pretty athletic dude.
Okay. Win on an extra point try. If the extra point is blocked and returned for a score, I say give the defense 6.
Whoa.
6.
Game-changing play, man. Just 2 points. You know how far they ran to run that back? Like they
3 is excited. I'd bump it up to 3. I'd go to 3. 6 is a lot.
6 is too much.
Yeah.
I mean,
same thing happens on an extra point or a 2-point try. If somebody's going for 2 and you pick it off and run it the other way, that's a lot of effort for just 2 points. They only had to get 2.5 yards to get into the end zone for 2. You go 97.5 the other way.
You would have more coaches take knees in end of game situations on the extra point.
Oh, just to not risk it.
You wouldn't even risk like 6 points brings a lot more risk into it. Like it's like, hey, you scored a touchdown to go up 5. There's 17 seconds left. Guess what? I'm taking a knee.
So many gamblers furious.
Right.
Yes.
I would move the extra point back to the NFL distance, though. I think that's been a good thing for the game. I looked it up. I think college made it this year at like 92%. You know, like what did the NFL back it back to? Like a 35 yarder?
Mm-hmm. I think they placed the ball on 15, I think. Is that it? Or 12? I don't know.
15, 17 is what, 32 yards?
Yeah.
Yeah. That could make it more. We would go for 2 a little more interesting decisions. As a broadcaster, it's not just automatic. All right, let's go kick the extra point. It takes a boring play out of the game.
All right,
Chip, did you see Tom's suggestion on the extra point?
No,
on the field goals?
Let's see. What was it?
Tom wants field goals of more than 50 yards to be worth 4 points. Kind of like NBA Jam power up. I kind of like it.
If we're gonna do that, then give a point for a doink. All right. Like if we're gonna go like total the hot spots and like and goose it up a little bit, give me a point for just hitting the upright. If we're just gonna do 4 points for 50. All right, Danny, what's your big picture?
So big picture, I feel like the playoffs have been stale. I think there's a bunch of things you could do. And it's almost like we could use a whole podcast and like restructuring of college football.
I think we
have one coming.
We have one coming up on the play.
All right, good. All right. So don't blow my wad right here is what you're saying.
Right.
I think I would love to see the Power 5 and the Group of 5 separate and do their own playoffs, Group of 5 playoff. I'd love to see an 18 playoff, but I think if you went to routine scheduling where there's continuity across the board, every conference is playing the same, whether it's a round robin, have the divisions the same and or either eliminate divisions altogether, have the top 2 teams play, which I probably think is the best way to do it. But have everybody play the same amount of other Power 5 opponents and Group of 5 opponents so that you can't schedule a couple cupcakes. Like, I just think there needs to be some continuity with the scheduling. But eventually, playoff expansion has been my thing I've pounded the table for 7 or 8 years now. Even since we went to the Final Four, I just said that was nice. It could be better. And I think it is better. And again, people come back and they're like, well, that's not going to solve the problem. You're right. Bama's still going to be great. Ohio State's going to be great. Clemson's going to be great. But I think it makes the games along the way would be even more entertaining. And I think it would really save November of the season, which has kind of become irrelevant recently, where we're only focused on the 6, 7, or 8 teams in the month of November. And there's some really good football games that could be for a lot more if there were 8 teams in there and you were still in the hunt for your conference championship.
I want 9 games across the board,
Mm-hmm.
like the SEC and the ACC, to go 9 conference games. And if they want to maintain those traditional rivalries, then that's great. You're going to be playing a tough schedule. Maybe this goes hand in hand with the conference expansion, where you're going to be a little bit less concerned about one loss knocking you 100% out of the national championship picture when there's twice as many spots in the playoff for the national championship. But yeah, Pac-12, Big Ten, both went to 9. Big 12's been at 9. SEC, ACC, I know they don't want to, but I'd like to see that be the same across the board, because it's not that difficult. They've each instituted this 8+1 sort of format to try and create that idea that, you know, there's still some equity, but let's make it 9 conference games across the board.
I don't like the 9 conference games because I like for these power ratings to be really good and useful for gambling purposes. I want as much interconnectivity as possible between the leagues. But I think the only real way that you don't expand the playoff is to get ESPN to stop pretending that the only thing that matters in college football is the playoff. And since ESPN paid about a couple $2 billion for the playoff, that's probably not going to happen. So expanding the playoff seems to be a little bit more reasonable solution.
Any other big picture stuff before we get out of here?
College football commissioner, like a czar, somebody who's in charge, that can, and again, I think this is all probably coming when we separate eventually, who knows where it is, but that would require Greg Sankey to give up some control. You know, it would require some of these conference commissioners to give up some control, which they like. They can do their own thing, but I don't necessarily think it has to be such a bad thing. It just, and we saw it glaringly evident with the disastrous handling of COVID by all the conferences, because that's where we got in this mess. Why the Pac-12 played, almost half the games that the ACC and SEC played was because there was no person in charge. Instead, you have 5 really powerful people who can do their own thing. Some of them are more powerful than others. We realize that. And also somebody to legislate punishments. We're talking about targeting, reviewing these things, faking injuries. If something goes to a body and to determine what's the penalty going to be, then I think it should be that person in charge of the game. And then, you want to get really crazy, I think a czar of scheduling, where no more games 10, 11 years in advance, but you have somebody, and this is where I kind of get comfortable, and I don't love it, but we're already going there anyway. College football is becoming more like the NFL. Put out the schedule much shorter, but get the better, more competitive games every year, and have somebody hand out the schedules to Florida, to Ohio State, to Bama, to Florida State. We could do it right now. It would give us a ton of stuff to talk about, instead of a Big Ten schedule release on the Friday night before, forget what it was, that with Super Bowl weekend. It's like, great, thanks. And no one even talked about it. But could you imagine, as you could find out who your non-conference are going to be, and they could be really compelling, and it would all be driven, if you were still going to select the playoffs. All right, how can we schedule the best matchups available to determine who's going to be there? And sorry, I just started to go on this rant. And Alabama fans might not like this, but if you wanted to kind of try to create more parity, you could do it through scheduling, and Alabama probably still would run the table. Clemson might still run the table, but guess what? If they played each other, they're going to have a loss on their schedule, and if you had Kansas play whoever at the bottom, kind of help them get off to a better start of a season. So I don't know. That's kind of my wild, harebrained idea.
But the kickoff games provide some of those, right? And the kickoff games do have to be at least a few years in advance so that you can sell the tickets to your fans. But
why? You don't think they'd buy them if they were giving them to them right now in February September 1st? All
you'd have to do is point to a bowl game. Fans don't understand. It's like, oh, we got picked to go to Atlanta to Dallas or to Charlotte or, to wherever the kickoff games are. Then
that's the other thing I would do. I would move the bowls that aren't in the playoff to the preseason. That's my last one. Bam. There you go. Just drop that bomb on him before I have to go.
I like that.
All right.
Because then you don't have to worry about the players opting out. They got to play in them. They got to play in the bowl because it's still everything matters still. There's no irrelevant games. It's the Bahamas Bowl to start the season. Better hydrate. Better be a night game.
I would have it in the spring. Make your spring game against the team you're supposed to play there.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Great.
That would be good.
You got to go do NFL?
Yeah, I got to go do the HQ NFL happy hour show.
Ooh, 4:00. Always check it out. Danny Cannell will be on there. You can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.